Hello, welcome to this video lesson, or this is more like a revision video, focusing on the key quotations in Macbeth. Now, there's quite a few quotations I've picked out. I've gone through the play Act 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chronologically. So I'd suggest the best way of using this video would be to have your finger hovering over the pause button, have your pen and paper, post-it notes, notepad, however you're revising, and pick out the quotations that you think you'll find easier to remember, or you think they'll have more relevance in connection to a greater number of themes and characters. A good way of revising is to pick one of the quotations and explode it, so kind of on its own, link it to character, link it to theme. I'll do that as we go through here. So yeah, have your pen and paper ready and pause button. Don't know why I did the wide eye on that, but there you go. Okay, so Act 1. Yeah, some of the writing text will be a little bit smaller, so but you guys aren't as old as me, so your eyesight should be fine. Or you can enlarge your screen with your fancy smartphones. I'll stop talking now. Right, Act 1. The witches. Fair is foul and foul is fair. They set the tone for the play that all is not as it seems. Okay, so that links to the theme of appearance and reality. It also, as I've just alluded to above it, it links to Macbeth's opening lines in the play. His first line, his first spoken line is, "So foul and fair a day I have not seen." So through language, he's connecting himself to the witches in the audience's mind. Remember, the witches, supernatural, it was a real thing. James I, the king at the time, in the Jacobean era, he actually wrote a book called Demonology on the supernatural. He was fascinated by and feared the supernatural. So for the main character to be aligning himself with the supernatural, he's not good. It's not good at all, because they're considered evil. And remember, in Act 1, Scene 1, the witches themselves are promising to meet Macbeth when the battle's done upon the heath. Also, the witches, they only ever appear in thunder. Now, they didn't have a scientific explanation for what causes thunder 400 years ago. So the people actually believed that thunder was a representative of an evil force. And Shakespeare only has them appear when there is thunder. Okay, Macbeth. If chance will have me king, why chance may crown me without my stir. So Macbeth here doesn't really want to kill Duncan. If he can become king without killing Duncan, he'd rather take that course. And Duncan's rewarded him already with the Thane of Cawdor as a promotion for winning the battle against Norway. So he's thinking, well, if I just sit tight and do nothing, I may become king. And Duncan himself, as you see in the next line, "I have begun to plant thee and will labour to make thee full of growing." Duncan acknowledges that he's already begun to promote and reward and acknowledge all that Macbeth has done for his country and his kingship. So, Macbeth can sit tight and he might become king. It also does reflect on poor judgment from Duncan's point of view. He's only rewarded Macbeth with the Thane of Cawdor title because the original Thane of Cawdor betrayed him. So that's consecutive betrayals of the Thane of Cawdor. Poor judge of character, Duncan. Lady Macbeth, after she's read the letter from Macbeth, detailing the witch's prophecies, she's thinking about, she's reflecting on his character. This is the brave, fierce warrior we've just met on the battlefield, yet she fears thy nature. It is too full of the milk of human kindness. You what, love? You're saying that Macbeth's character is too full of the milk of human kindness. You obviously know a different side to him than we do. But she's right. He is reluctant and hesitant about killing Duncan, and she does have to call on all her wily charms to persuade and manipulate and encourage him to kill the king. There's also a link to gender role reversal. She's the dominant one within their relationship, certainly at the outset, which is amazing because of the sheer brute power and hero status Macbeth, her husband, has in the wider society. She calls on the supernatural unsex me here, aiming to remove her femininity to make her more like a man and thus more able to kill, or at least persuade Macbeth to kill. Because the question is Lady Macbeth powerful? Well, to an extent, she certainly is. But if she knows she has to call on evil spirits to give her the requisite power and strength to convince her husband to kill someone, is she all that powerful? And then who does descend into madness and ultimately commit suicide towards the end of the play? Well, it doesn't point to all that much power in the end. Continuing with Act 1, that my keen knife see not the wound it makes. So, wishing to hide her deed from heaven's eyes as she knows it's wrong. Connect this to the divine right of kings. In the Jacobean era, the people believed that the king was God-appointed, divine right of kings, and it followed a particular bloodline. To kill the king was to go against God, to go against nature. And this links to the appearance and reality. Look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it. She's using imperative language. It like commands, and she's commanding the spirits, but she's also commanding her husband, warning him that he needs to not walk around looking so troubled. Duncan's coming to celebrate the victory, so you need to be happy and celebratory and welcoming. So look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it. Macbeth musing over whether he should kill the king or not. If it were done when 'tis done, then it were done quickly. He just wishes it was done and dusted. Points to a guilty conscience. And if you think of the immediate aftermath, where we'll have a look at in Act 2, Scene 2, of immediate aftermath of the murder of Duncan, you'll see how his paranoia and guilt and remorse and regret torment him. But Lady Macbeth, again in control, dominating her husband, when he says, but what if we fail? But screw your courage to the sticking place and we'll not fail. She's reassuring him. She's very confident. And he goes along. He kowtows to her. False face must hide what the false heart doth know. Macbeth now is on the same page as his wife, hiding the truth from everyone and, well, from God. Stars, hide your fires. He doesn't want God to know what he's planning because he knows it. He knows should he commit the deed, he'll end up in hell. Okay, on to Act 2. Points to a troubled mind, maybe his guilt. He hallucinates once more. Is this a dagger which I see before me? Remember, it's leading him to Duncan's chamber. Now, why doesn't Lady? It's a question that popped up in my mind. Why doesn't Lady Macbeth, if she's so ambitious and so evil and powerful herself, why doesn't she just kill Duncan? She offers up this as a possible excuse or reason why not, and it's a revealing insight into her real self. Had he not resembled my father as he slept, I had done it. Fast forward to the sleepwalking scene, and she, in one of her ramblings, she questions how the old man could have had so much blood. So it points to foreshadows a troubled mind for her. In the immediate aftermath of Duncan's murder, Macbeth is hearing voices. He's paranoid. He's guilt, and she's trying to tell him to quit, to stop, to wise up, to strengthen up, to stop going on like ranting and raving about what he's done and how he wishes he could undo it. She says, "Stop. It will make us mad." A bit ironic because that's exactly what happens. She says, "A little water clears us of this deed. How easy is it then?" This dismissive attitude comes back to haunt her later, providing further evidence that she's far weaker than she lets on. She's because Macbeth has come out of the Duncan's chamber with the two daggers, not part of her plan. He was supposed to have smeared the blood on the guards and left the daggers with them to make it look like their guilt. But he's gone to pieces. He's so traumatized by what he's done. He's not able to think clearly, and he's walked out of the chamber with the two bloody daggers in his hand. He refuses to go back in to finish the job. instead, Lady Macbeth has to take the daggers off him. And so she comes back out and she says, look, my hands are as bloody as yours now. Here, a little water clears us of this deed. Again, fast forward to when she's sleepwalking and she's frantically rubbing her palm of her hand and saying, out damn spot, out damn spot. Remember, blood throughout Macbeth is a motif for guilt. She's trying to wash the guilt off her hands as easy as sticking them under a tap. Then when Macduff arrives at the castle to call for Duncan and discovers her body, Macbeth, in a fake fit of rage, actually kills the guards. Obviously, he's guilty. He doesn't want the guards to wake up and insist their innocence. So he kills them, and he asks for forgiveness that in a fit of rage he did kill them. And Macduff is like, well, why did you do that? And Lady Macbeth senses that Macduff is going to focus more attention on why Macbeth did that. So she pretends to faint. And Macduff's reaction to that is, oh, gentle lady, 'tis not for you to hear what I can speak. And this is ironic because she's the architect of the murder. So look at the gender roles. He doesn't look at her, in this instance, with anything other than the desire to protect her, from this unpleasantness. On to Act 3. Macbeth about Banquo. There is none but he whose being I do fear. This relates back to the witch's prophecy for Banquo, and it causes large degrees of paranoia in Macbeth. Remember, at the same time the witches greeted Macbeth as Thane of Cawdor and King hereafter, they also said that Banquo would be father to kings. And that as soon as they said that, that set Banquo's path against Macbeth. And so Macbeth decides that he needs to get rid of Banquo and Banquo's son. Lady Macbeth about killing, what's done is done. Irony is this casual attitude towards Duncan's murder belies her true feelings, as is manifest in her sleepwalking. Macbeth fails to kill Banquo and his son. Kills Banquo, but the son escapes. So he says, we have scorched the snake, not killed it. So this is still festering in his mind, to the extent that, oh, full of scorpions is my mind, dear wife. His mind is tortured. Compare this to how he was at the start of the play, loving life. Life had never been better for him. Great relationship, hero worship by all the people, including the king, promoted, the promise of further promotion. Now look at him, one act, one inability to control his ambition, an impatience, allowing ambition, his fatal flaw, Hamartia, to overwhelm him. And it's not sitting pretty with him now. Look at the relationship in the next quotation. He was so dependent and reliant upon her. They shared everything. He couldn't even wait a couple of hours to meet his wife and tell her about the witches. He wrote a letter and sent somebody on ahead to deliver the letter to let her know. But now, be innocent of the knowledge, dearest Chuck. She's wondering what he's up to. He refuses to tell her. Be innocent of the knowledge. The language very similar to the language she used against him. Look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it. So this is maybe an indication that the traditional gender roles have resumed, with Macbeth in control, making decisions without conferring with his wife. But she still has a final role to play in trying to calm him down when he hallucinates Banquo's ghost at the feast. And she's again, are you a man? Because she knows that works. It worked when she tried to convince him to kill Duncan. She's trying to get him to stop going to pieces. His decision, wisely, in inverted commas, I will tomorrow to the weird sisters, more shall they speak. Emphasises or underlines his reliance now on the witches, not his wife. But he says, damned are those who believe a word the witches say, whilst believing everything the witches say. So he is damned, and he is damned to hell. Act 4. So the witches speaking in riddles. They don't actually tell Macbeth to do anything. He interprets what they say and acts accordingly. For none of woman born shall harm Macbeth. So they speak in riddles, deliberately toying with Macbeth. So his response to that: the castle of Macduff I will surprise, his wife, his babes, and all unfortunate souls that trace him in his line. So his decision to act on what the witches tell him reflects a cowardly act. None of that bravery on the battlefield anymore. He's killing women and children. He killed an old man while he was asleep. Cowardly, one would say. And this sets Macduff against him if he wasn't already so. Macduff wasn't to be found in the castle because he'd gone to England to join Malcolm and the English army to march north and overthrow Macbeth and return Scotland to its rightful heir, Malcolm. Not in the legions of horrid hell can come a devil more damned in evils to top Macbeth. Very Gothic imagery depicting the reign of Macbeth. Contrast this with how Duncan was viewed. His response to the news that Macbeth had killed his wife and children: all my pretty ones. Did you say all? Oh, hell kite. All, what all my pretty chickens and their at one fell swoop. So the die is cast now. It's going to be a battle to the death between Macduff and Macbeth. But Macbeth is okay, isn't he? Because none born of woman shall harm Macbeth, according to the witches. While all this is going on, Lady Macbeth, meanwhile, no longer involved with her husband, but she is sleepwalking, and she's looking at her hands, and she's been observed by the doctor and her attendant woman, and she's like, looking at her hands. Will these hands never be clean? But hang on a minute, didn't she just say a little water clears us of this deed? So a reference back to earlier. Here's the smell of blood still. All the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten this hand. She cannot rid herself. Remember, blood as a motif for guilt. She cannot rid herself of the guilt of what she's done. To bed, to bed. There's knocking at the gate. Come, 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 come. Give me your hand. What's done cannot be undone. To bed, to bed, to bed. Her mind is tortured by what she's done. She's speaking in prose here, which is normally the domain of the lesser characters. Speaking in blank verse is the role, is how Shakespeare has his characters of higher status speak. So this kind of reflects her fall from grace, if you like. The knocking at the gate is a reference to Macduff coming for Duncan on the morning, just before his body is discovered. And Macbeth and Lady Macbeth can hear the knocking, and Macbeth is so troubled and so full of remorse that he says about the knocking at the gate, "Wake Duncan with thy knocking, I wouldst thou could." So that's a link back to that previous point. Macbeth reveals he's seen so much horror, nothing more can shock him. I've supped full with horrors, direness, familiar to my slaughterous thoughts, cannot once start me. His response to the news of Lady Macbeth's death is interesting. I've got one here, out brief candle, life's but a walking shadow. This is his reflection that life is precarious. He also says something else which I haven't got here. He says she should have died hereafter, which is really interesting. There's two ways of interpreting that. One could be his irritation at the timing of her death. I'm in the middle of this battle with Macduff. Why is she dying now? What can I do about it now? Or it could be something far less impassioned and just very cold and callous. Well, we all have to die sometime, could be his response. Either way, it's a sad indictment on what's become of their relationship. Macduff about Macbeth isn't interested in engaging in discourse with them at all. He's just determined to exact revenge for his family. I have no words. My voice is in my sword. Thou bloodier villain than terms can give thee out. And Macbeth tells him, you can't harm me because I know that none born of woman shall harm me. And then Macduff says, tell thee, Macduff was from his mother's womb untimely ripped. This is his revelation that his birth wasn't a natural one. So linking to the witch's riddle and signalling the end of Macbeth. Okay, I think that's the last screen. I'm not going to click it forward because, I don't know, close the PowerPoint. That's a lot of quotations there. Obviously, it will be impossible for you to memorize all of them, but 2 or 3 from each act Choose carefully. The ones you can connect to most are the ones you should focus on. They'll be the most useful to you. Particular character, a range of characters, a range of themes. Okay, lovely. See you again soon.